I can't imagine passing over those flagstones every day.
It would take your appetite away, wouldn't it?
I just couldn't, but that's why I'm not a murderer, I suppose, so good on me.
That's the only reason you're not a murderer.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, the guilt. No.
But also, if he was having an affair with Marie, why would he publicise that?
Yeah. I responded with my face there and realised we're doing a podcast, and it's like, no, you're going to have to say something, Anthony.
We will be doing the rest of this in silence.
Yeah.
The luggage is weird. One, why is it left behind? I suppose she's trying to get rid of the blood-stained clothes, but why is she also getting rid of 11 petticoats and 20 stockings? Because she's not rich. So that seems like a lot.
Shut your face, Maddy Pelling, because you have just actually tied two parts of this case together in my mind. They belong to the daughter of the Duchess of Sutherland. I have no proof of that, but I bet you that's why she was kicked out.
Oh
no
my
proof.
God. If you had just been implicated in a crime and you were in central London, what station would you go to and what city in Britain would you run to?
Oh God.
Or would you try and get on a plane?
I'd just try and go to Ireland, wouldn't I? I'd just be like...
That's so predictable.
No, I was here. Yeah, well, see, I'd be such a shit criminal. I really would. I couldn't cope.
Hello and welcome to After Dark. In today's episode, we're going into the heart of Dickensian Britain, through the smog of London at its industrial peak, and into the heart of a dark murder. Here's Anthony to take it away.
London, 1849. The city groans under the weight of the industrial age. Queen Victoria sits on the throne as Britain tightens its grip on empire, and the Times reports the death toll from yet another wave of cholera tearing through the city. Inside the capital, wealth and poverty live side by side. Gilded parlours overlook alleys where hungry children sleep in the shadows. The streets of Bermondsey are choked with fog, sweat and soot. This is a world of clanging iron and endless hunger. Rats skitter along gutters, cold dust clings to the skin, and secrets are buried in brickwork. And, inside a cramped terraced house on Miniver Place, something terrible is about to unfold. Frederick and Marie Manning have dressed for dinner. The kitchen is dim, the floor newly scrubbed, though a keen eye might notice the flagstones are uneven. Upstairs, their lodgers stir, oblivious. Their guest tonight is Patrick O'Connor, a man with money in his pockets and his past with Marie firmly on his mind. He arrives at the door with the confidence of someone long welcomed, not knowing that the table has been set not just for supper, but for murder. As the oil lamp flickers and the city's grime clings to the window panes, a plan honed over weeks nears its end. A pistol has been secreted behind a cupboard door. A shovel has been propped against the scullery wall. What happens tonight will spill across the penny broadsheets and draw crowds in their thousands to the gallows. This is a story soaked in the smoke of Dickensian London, where love curdles into greed and the floor beneath your feet might just be hiding a body. This is After Dark, and this is the Bermondsey Horror.
Hello everyone, I'm Maddie.
And I'm Anthony.
And this is an episode that you guys have been asking for, I think, since the beginning of the podcast 2 whole years ago.
How do you know what they've been asking for? Because I never know what they've been asking. You always seem to know.
Yeah, but we know that you have literally no memory. Not a one.
But like on socials and stuff?
Yeah, on socials. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I guess people write in. Like, I don't see the emails. Our producers read those, just to clarify. Like, if you write in,
she's
someone
snowed
will
under
read
with
them.
admin.
Yeah. It's God, please stop writing. No, do write. Someone will deal with you. It just won't be me. I am genuinely very excited for this. And whilst I am an 18th centuryist at heart, and we've already established that my long 18th century continues into the Victorian period, and whilst I do not care for the late Victorian period, this is a sweet spot. We're in the 1840s. This is acceptable. I'm good to go. This is a moment where Queen Victoria has only been on the throne for 12 years, so we're not that far into what is going to be a very long reign. There's a backdrop, as we heard at the beginning, of this smoggy, factory-packed Dickensian world of soot and grime. It's deliciously disgusting with the distance of history, I suppose. The other thing that I find so interesting about this story is that it takes place on Jacob's Island, which is one of London's most notorious slums in the 19th century. And it's an area that in that moment was packed with tanneries. So you can just imagine not only the sort of quality of the air in terms of the grime that was in it, but also the smell. This is sensory overload for me. If I had to travel back in time and was plonked down here, never mind all the murdering and people being buried under the floorboards, just the sensory overload alone would kill me, I think.
Well, speaking about somebody getting killed, this is a history of somebody getting killed.
Very good move into the actual story there. Well done.
It's like I've done this before. So we're talking about the Bermondsey murder in particular. And just to give you a little overview of what we're going to be dealing with in this episode. This is set in 1849. It's the murder of Patrick O'Connor by Frederick and Marie Manning. They are a married couple living in Bermondsey in London. And Marie had previously been O'Connor's lover, and she had been plotting to kill O'Connor with her husband, Frederick. Are you confused? It's not that confusing. That's about as confusing as it gets. And the reason they wanted to kill him was for his money. So that's the overview. And now we're going to go into some of the details in a little bit more depth.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm still thinking about the sensory overload, but we are going to plot this out in a little bit more detail. So, Anthony, give me the timeline of this case. Who are the main characters and when does this story really start to begin? When do we first encounter them?
So we press play in the early 1840s, and I suppose our leading lady is Marie de Rue, although if you're reading some of the contemporary accounts, you will often see her named as Maria, but it's the same person. So it's either Maria de Rue, but Marie we're going to call her for the purposes of this episode. She is a Swiss-born woman. She has moved to England when she's 28, and she starts working as a lady's maid for the daughter of the Duchess of Sutherland. So it's, it's a relatively prestigious
that's a good gig.
Position. Yeah, it is a good gig. And it begs questions, actually, based on some of the things we know about her. Let's discover some of those things now. So what we find out very quickly is that she leaves that employment. We're told she leaves. Does she leave? Does she get kicked out? I don't know. It doesn't really make sense because she leaves and ends up living in Bermondsey. And some of the sources at the time, and I don't buy this, claim that she left due to her ambition and her taste for luxury. Now, I think they're writing this with the knowledge that they have a murderess on their hands, because if she had an ambition for taste and luxury, which she might very well have had, she would have stayed with the daughter of the Duchess of Sutherland. She would not be in Bermondsey.
Yeah, exactly. As we've heard, Bermondsey is one of the most horrendous slums in the city at this point. And to have gone, from living as a lady's maid, you're living in a fine house, under the protection of that household, in a steady job. Something has gone wrong there. But it is interesting because I think we come up against this so many times, especially in the 19th century, actually, when a woman is at the heart of a murder and is not the victim, that she is transformed often in the media, often in the press, as a monster, as someone who has inverted her own femininity, who is going against the ideals of the time and is monstrous in all these different kind of ways. She's maybe ambitious, she's greedy, she's sexually manipulative to the men around her. And I suspect that's what we're going to see in the story. And I'm just bearing that in mind and thinking about how we strip those layers back as we go, actually. So I want to keep thinking about that. But either way, we do know that she leaves the employment of the daughter of the Duchess of Sutherland and she ends up in Bermondsey. So, I mean, so far, not great, but no crime has been committed. So what happens next?
So, well, let's talk about some of the other characters before we go into the what next part, just so that we have them lined up. So we have Marie there. Our next person that we're going to be looking at is our victim, and that is Patrick O'Connor. He is 50 years old. He is an independently wealthy Irishman. He's a customs officer and a moneylender. And this is key. And when I was looking at some of the research for this, I was like, what are they talking about? This man always having money on him. Why do they know he has money on him all the time? It's because he is a customs officer. He also collects rents, and because he's a moneylender, so he's going around with a lot of cash on him kind of at all times. He also has valuable railway shares, but that they're not necessarily on him.
See, that's so interesting though, because I mean the railway at this point is presumably very, very new. It's in its earliest stages. So he's a sort of a man who is tapped into modern 19th century ways of making money, right? He's presumably on the rise and is obviously, as you say, wealthy as well. So how do the paths cross, or do they cross at this point?
They do cross, and there are differing, you're talking about sources and how reliable sources are. We have to remember that we are reading sources from the 19th century here that's all about crime. This is how we know about these people. There are varying views. One is that they met in the 1840s. We're probably guessing around the mid 1840s when she was in domestic service. That's one of the things. I have read another account that says she met at customs when she was with the daughter of the Duchess of Sutherland, that they were going somewhere and that's how she met him, Patrick O'Connor.
And I can't imagine that being like a long interaction at customs.
Yeah, I know. Like, it's like, well, now we're having an affair. But somehow their paths cross and they form a romantic relationship. And bear in mind that, as you're kind of hinting there, this is a wealthy man, a wealthy self-made Irishman, and that is something that comes into play. Like, often you'll read accounts of him going, "Oh, he's brutal, and actually he's quite boastful, and you know what, he's always drunk." And I was like, there's a lot of Irish stereotypes going on there. Potentially, he's also just a successful businessman who happens to have done quite well for himself. There's also that going on.
There's definitely a feeling of like he doesn't deserve the wealth that he's got, the position that he's got for himself.
Yeah.
I also want to just point out that I think the age gap between them is interesting. So Marie is 28 when she comes to England.
Yeah.
And he is already in his 50s. And I wonder, actually, I mean, you mentioned there that they meet potentially when she's in domestic service. And I just wonder if she's a servant in his household when they start a relationship and what that power dynamic might look like. It's just an interesting possibility.
I don't think so, though, because I think the only domestic service position that she had in England was in for the daughter of the Duchess of Sutherland. She came to do that job. That's why she was there. So in England now, not in Switzerland and not prior in continental Europe, but in England, that's her domestic service record is just that one. So she won't have been in his household as a servant, but somehow she still meets him in that. It's really not quite clear.
It's a mystery, isn't it? Okay, so we have them having some kind of relationship. We don't know how they meet. Their paths cross. He's wealthy, he's older. She is in this happy, comfortable position until she's not, for whatever reason, and is out of work and living in a slum.
Yeah, and we don't know, and that to me is just really suspicious. That there's a story there that we don't have the archival evidence for, but there's something going on there.
Yeah, and also because, being a lady's maid is a privileged position. It's a position of intimacy with the woman who employs you. It's a position of trust. It's a position that you could hope to hold for many, many years, potentially a job for life, depending, I suppose, on the age of the woman who you're looking after. So that something has gone drastically wrong there, I think. But tell me this, she's now in Bermondsey. She's having some kind of relationship, maybe on and off. We don't really know. They're certainly
That's
not
the
living
impression
together.
I get. Yeah.
Yeah. But we know from your opening there that she is eventually married to someone else. So who is this person and how do they meet?
So we're not sure how they meet, but it's Frederick George Manning. He is 37 at the time when they get married. And we think that they met around the 1846 mark, just based on the sequence of events. Now, why does she marry him, who is Manning, who is working class, doesn't have the financial prospects of Patrick O'Connor? It's a question we don't necessarily know the answer to, but some sources will tell you that it's because Patrick O'Connor would not marry Marie de Roe. So he was not willing to take her as an official wife. So that's interesting as well. So there's something going on here where Marie might be attractive for sexual purposes or whatever, but for some reason for Patrick, she's not fitting the criteria of wife. Couple that with the idea that she's been dismissed from the Duchess of Sutherland's daughter's house. Something's going on here. We don't have the archival evidence. It would all just be speculation, but it is interesting nonetheless.
It is interesting, especially because Patrick O'Connor himself, being in his 50s and a respectable man who's got all these investments and, a steady job and a reasonable amount of money to his name for the time and his position in society, surely he would, to paraphrase Jane Austen, be in want of a wife.
Yeah, not Marie though.
Not Marie.
So yeah, that's exactly the point, right? It's like, okay, there's something there.
Yeah. So, okay, tell me this, because I think this is one of the most interesting things in this case, and it's something that we see again and again. I'm trying to think back to the case that we did, I think in the 1920s, with a sort of throuple situation where one of them was murdered by the married pair, but they were all kind of living together. And we have like photos of them in the garden and stuff. I can't remember what that episode is called. Maybe producer Stu will tell us that while we're talking. But I'm thinking here that there are some blurred lines in terms of the relationships that are going on, because you already have this kind of strange relationship with O'Connor where Marie is not his wife, she's not living with him, but there is some kind of maybe sexual relationship still ongoing. And then she's marrying Frederick Manning, but the relationship with O'Connor doesn't necessarily end, does it?
No, I mean, I have to really admit that as a historian, this details in this case don't make sense to me. It's what's in the primary source material, but they don't really make sense to me. And here's why. Because we know that Frederick and Marie are married and they're living in a house in Bermondsey. They're renting that house, but they also have rented out rooms to lodgers. Bear in mind this idea of kind of upper working class. That's not a thing, but like relatively comfortable people renting out rooms. It's a sign of comfortability. And I think if you want to say that Marie is trying to propagate that image, then that having lodgers, I mean, obviously there's got to be a financial need. It just covers some of the need that they have financially. But there's also something about respectability there. I'm a landlady, that kind of a thing. So they're living in Bermondsey, in Turble area, but they have lodgers. They are also involved somehow with Patrick still. So Patrick is very much still on the scene. We don't know what Patrick knew as to what his dynamic was, but we also don't necessarily know what Frederick and Marie knew about the dynamic. So sometimes I wonder, even it seems like such a basic point and fact in all the reporting on this case. Sometimes I even wonder if Patrick and Marie were involved romantically.
I was just going to say exactly the same thing, right? Like this does kind of smack of the misogynistic press at the time in the 19th century and the kind of sensationalism, right? Of, we so often find this in true crime, of these marital boundaries being blurred and sort of sexual ideals of the time, sexual morals of the time being blurred, and people become obsessed with it. It's not necessarily, in some ways I think it takes over the gruesomeness of the crimes themselves, that people are like, oh, you can peer through the keyhole of someone else's life. You don't know if your next door neighbour's sleeping with your postman 3 doors down. It's that interests people so much. I think this insight into ordinary lives and actually how not standard they are, and how people are just sort of getting on with all these complicated things in the shadows until a light is shone on them. And I think that's what we have here to a certain extent, but I do wonder if, I suppose there has to be some connection between the three people. There has to be something, but is there necessarily a potential connection?
Here's a potential connection that I find a little bit more compelling. Again, I will caveat this. All the sources tell us that she was involved with Patrick. So, like this is there to be said. So I'm going against the evidence, but just I'm also aware of, we need to question the sources and we need to question what the motivation of those sources are. Anyway, so Frederick, the husband in this, used to work on the railways. So he has a connection to railway work. And obviously Patrick has a link to railway with his investments. So I don't know. I can't say for certain, but it's something that was... It just strikes me there's something a little bit off about this, the idea of this throuple thing. And here's the thing, it's a trope more than anything else in some of these murders, as you're saying, like this idea that there are two men fighting, jostling over a woman, and she's in the middle and maybe she's manipulating both of them because she's so wanted.
The strings. Exactly.
Whereas, realistically, what we have is that we know O'Connor is wealthy. We know he has an awful lot of money on him at all times because of the nature of his job. And they see an opportunity there. That's what we definitely know, right? So whatever about the relationship dynamics, that's a different question, I think.
I agree completely. So take me to some of the more concrete information that we do have, which is the night of the killing itself. Walk me through what actually happens and how we know about it.
Okay, how do we know about it? We have a lot of newspaper reports that come out after the fact. We have the trial record, and we have a testimony of a lodger that was in the house, not the night of the murder, but that was in the house in and around that kind of time. So afterwards, we have the Times and the Illustrated London News saying that Marie had asked O'Connor to come to their house. And this was one of the other things that went, what? That doesn't make any sense to me. And to bring his valuables to dinner. And there's an explanation potentially that this is under the guise of investing them for him or entrusting her with them for its safekeeping. That does not add up to me. It doesn't make any sense. The only thing that makes sense is they know he's collecting rents. They know he's collecting debts. That means he will finish his workday with a shitload of money in his pockets. Let's look at it practically. Like, why would they be handing over money to Marie and Frederick? No, he's smarter than that. It doesn't. Anyway, it's a small detail, but it's annoying, I think.
But I think that's huge. Yeah, when I was reading the notes of this episode, I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Because if you're a wealthy person, you're carrying a lot of cash, why would you then be like, oh, at the end of my day, carrying all this money, I'm going to go to the poorest slum in London, to some dodgy tenant, rented rooms run by these people who I have some kind of vague connection with. I mean, I'm wondering, I'm wondering if actually there is some kind of corrupt connection between the two men, right? You mentioned that they have the railways in common. Why would O'Connor be going to the Manning's house at all unless they were doing some kind of business? I don't buy it, because I mean, he's not going to be like, I'm going to deposit all my worldly goods.
No,
in
that's
your
not happening.
Dodgy house.
That's just not happening.
Like
where there's loads of lodgers. No, that's just not happening.
Also, like they don't have a concrete enough connection, because what if they stole that money? He can't go to court and be like, well, I was sleeping with this married woman and then she stole all my money. People aren't going to care or help him. It's just, there's so many unanswered questions. This is fascinating. There's so much that we won't know.
No, see, this is the thing, and that's why I'm finding it frustrating. It's just because we will not know the answer to these questions. That's the problem. But you said at the start of this, like, what do we know? So we know that when he went inside very quickly, so he did go to Miniver Place, to their house, and we know that once he did go in there, he was very quickly, probably immediately, shot in the back of the head by Marie specifically, and then did not die and was bludgeoned maybe up to 17 times by Frederick with a crowbar. So quite a bloody and violent intervention from Frederick. But Marie was the one who shot the gun.
Oh, Marie. I mean, if you shoot someone in the head at close quarters, just try and get it right. How is he not dead? That's grim and brutal and very sad. I wonder in that moment, Frederick bludgeoning him, if that's something they planned. Obviously we'll hear what they do next to the body. That's definitely premeditated and very much planned. But I wonder if there's panic in that moment when Frederick is like, oh, right, okay, quick, let's just bash his head in, essentially.
It's definitely planned without a shadow of a doubt, because the gun is secreted behind the door, the crowbar is left just up against the wall. But 17 times sounds like a bit of chaos. You know what I mean? That they've panicked, or Frederick's panicked, or whatever in that moment, and just gone a little bit feral in the scene. Which you've just killed someone, so. Yeah,
I know. I also think this is a minor point, really, but I do think it's interesting the site of the murder itself. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about this a little bit with Hallie Rubenhold when we did a story of a murder, her new book. We did an interview with her about the Crippen case. And about 19th century, and in that case, early 20th century, quote-unquote respectable homes, whatever they are, and in this case, very much in a working-class home in a slum, but to be murdered in the kitchen, which is, I suppose, a space of domesticity, traditionally female, coded in this moment. It sort of goes against what are going to become, or already, and what are increasingly 19th century ideals of the home, of womanhood, of what it means to be a wife and how you run your household. And Marie's not exactly living up to the ideal housewife by shooting someone in the head in her kitchen.
Despite the fact that she claims that that's what, well, the papers claim, let me caveat that the papers claim that that's what she was kind of aiming for. I mean, one of the most gruesome things to me is we're talking about this domestic setting, and it's really key to this, because after he's being killed, his body is then stripped and buried under the kitchen flagstones. Where is one of the most busy rooms in any house is the kitchen. They are going to have to pass back and forth over the grave of this hastily dug grave of their murder victim every single day for the rest of their lives that they live in that house. And they had pre-dug this grave for him, so when he arrived into that kitchen seeing his own grave having been dug for him. They'd filled it with quicklime. So this is definitely, you've said it already, a premeditated attack. And we know from the trial later on that the shopkeeper confirms the fact that this has been purchased, that the quicklime has been purchased. So we're talking about some of those details we're seeing in more and more of these 19th century cases, where there is somewhat quasi-detective work going on, where they're putting these details together in a sequence.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I mean, it's interesting about, you say that is one of the busiest and most traversed rooms of the household, and I think that's absolutely true. I'm thinking about, of course, I assume that this house no longer exists, so we won't really know much about its architecture, but I'm assuming in a poor part of London that this may have had rough wooden boards in the rest of the rooms, and that the kitchen might have been the only thing with a stone flag floor. So, that's interesting. And also thinking about the lodgers, who, by the way, must have been out this night. They were. Okay, so I suppose they are going to spend time maybe in a front room, a parlour, if that exists in this house, and also their own rooms that they're renting. They're not necessarily going to go into the kitchen, because Marie would be responsible for going in there and cooking any meals that they took in that household.
Yes. Yeah, we shouldn't think of it as a modern house share in that everybody would be in the fridge with their things labelled. No, that's not the situation. So Marie is very much going to be expected to be in control of this space. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So, okay, so they've killed him in this horrible way. It was pre-planned, but it's become chaotic. They've stripped his body of the clothes that he's wearing and presumably the cash, etc., in his pockets.
Yes, but they were a little, and this is kind of interesting as well, they were disappointed to find how little he had on him. So they had an expectation of what they would find, and it didn't really match up to what they thought. But key to this is that they also took the key to his house. And then Marie, so this does suggest that, well, actually, the newspapers say Marie, we don't know, one of the two of them went to his lodgings and then stole more valuables from his lodgings, including his railway shares, by the way. But there was no sign of the big windfall of cash money that they thought they were going to get having done this. So it was a disappointing kill in the end. It wasn't quite worth the... And it also says to me, there's another question mark. If Marie had spent time as a lover in his house and was properly monitoring what was going on there, potentially they would have been a little bit more successful in what they were able to garner from this, or would have known exactly how much money. And it also speaks to the fact that Patrick's no fool, that actually his money is sequestered away somewhere where it's supposed to be, in a bank probably, and it's taken care of for reasons exactly like this.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that the media reports that it's Marie that goes to the house, because
yes.
I think that can tell us one of two things. Either, she's worked as a domestic servant before, so is she simply able to pass herself off as a servant? Because presumably O'Connor, he has money, he has a respectable position. Presumably he has at least one servant in his household, right? He must have a cook,
at least a come and go one. Yeah, someone's going to be there.
Maybe a charwoman coming in.
Yeah.
There will be someone. I would bet, given his status and the wealth that he does have, that it's a live-in servant.
I would say
at least one. So Marie either goes to the house under the guise of being another servant and is admitted. I know she has a key, but if there's a live-in servant, they're there all day, every day. Yeah. So what does that interaction look like? And does that tell us that actually she is a regular in that household?
Yes.
That her presence isn't questioned?
Yeah, that's one of the things that would act in potential favor. If it is her that goes, but if it's not, why are they admitting Frederick as well, just to rummage around the house? The fact that anybody has the opportunity to even take that much time to rummage, because yeah, as you say, it's most likely he has a live-in servant, but where's that servant during any of this time? Like, surely they would then be later able to testify, which we know they don't. There is no domestic servant of O'Connor's that testifies during the trial. So yeah, that's an interesting missing piece of the puzzle, but yet another, because it's missing, it means invention comes into it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because I don't buy that he doesn't have a servant. He's a single man living alone. He's not cooking his own meals.
Nah, he's not good. I mean,
Someone's
maybe he's eating
changing the
out,
bed.
but yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah,
even
I
so,
agree with you.
someone's doing the dusting, someone's lighting the fires. Like, he's not doing that stuff. So
No.
that is another question mark in this case that really interests me. So we have them going to the house. There's not much that they can take. They are disappointed. They don't find the treasures they were thinking of finding. And then, in the meantime, they have a dead body mouldering away under the kitchen floor. Surely people are going to start to smell that soon.
That is one of the grimmest things for me of this, and there's plenty of grim stuff, but like, just I can't imagine passing over those flagstones every day.
It would take your appetite away, wouldn't it?
I just couldn't, but that's why I'm not a murderer, I suppose. So good on me.
That's the only reason you're not a murderer.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, the guilt. No, yes, you're absolutely right. The lodger or lodgers, again, another question mark. We don't know exactly how many lodgers. There may only be one, but there may be more than one. Sources vary. The press is not reliable during this, their telling of this case. So a lodger or lodgers become suspicious of the strange smells, but they are told, oh, it's cleaning. You don't need to worry about that. That's fine. We've just been cleaning certain things. You know, it gets dismissed basically, because of certain substances that they're using during the cleaning. But one of the things that happens is that it's really well documented that now that O'Connor is missing, people that work with him are going, where's Patrick O'Connor? What's he doing here? And it was really well known on the 9th, the night that he went to their house, that he was going to their house. So again, it cements the relationship between them somehow, that it was not unusual for him to tell his work colleagues, oh, I'm going to the Mannings' house for dinner this evening.
But also, if he was having an affair with Marie, why would he publicise that?
Yeah. I responded with my face there and realised we're doing a podcast, and I was like, no, you're going to have to say something, Anthony.
We will be doing the rest of this in silence.
Yeah. So his co-workers all knew, and there is a report that one of his co-workers, another Irishman, Pierce Walsh, potentially even went to the Mannings and said, here, have you seen Patrick? He said he was coming here. And the story goes in this telling that that Marie said to him, no, yeah, he was supposed to come, but he never arrived. So they already know that they're potentially under suspicion. So both of them go, they're like, do you know what? I'm not sticking around here. This is only going to be a problem.
This is chaos. For a couple who've clearly planned this and thought through the mode of the murder, how exactly they're going to kill this person, and then what they're going to do with the body, up to the detail of getting the quicklime right. This isn't, even if there's been chaos in the moment of the killing itself, like this is a premeditated, planned thing that's been thought about calmly beforehand. And I suppose they haven't got the money from O'Connor that they wanted, but to then just leave your life, I mean, I suppose it's not like they're living a particularly extravagant life. They can walk away from a lodging house in Bermondsey and start somewhere else, but this just seems like such a strange and chaotic decision to have done this in the first place. This just seems utterly bizarre to me. And you can sort of imagine the second Irishman that you mentioned coming to the door and asking about Patrick O'Connor, and Frederick, maybe sort of reaching for the crowbar, but while they're having the conversation thinking, shit, am I going to have to clubber you to death as well? So, it just feels like things are falling apart now. But tell me this, when they go on the run, where are they going to go, first of all? And are they going together or separately? Because given everything that we know about, or everything that we've been hinting at about their relationship and the question marks around how solid that marriage is, how it works, what the boundaries are of it, I'm not convinced that they're a great team.
Your lack of trust in them is well placed. They go separately. They flee separately. And it's just as well they do, because Patrick O'Connor is officially reported missing by his friend John Holmes. And this then means that the police become involved in looking into his disappearance. Obviously, they're not necessarily looking into the murder just yet, but, you know, they know something suspicious is going on here.
Side note, there's someone with the surname Holmes in a 19th
Yes.
century murder case. Hello, Sherlock.
Yes. Yeah. So they're now officially reported missing. The police have been informed. They go to the lodging house. The Mannings are not there, but the lodgers say, actually, do you know what? There's been this weird smell in the house, and they were being a bit weird, and now they're suddenly gone. So something's not actually adding up here. So if you're a police officer, you go, I need to look into this a little bit more closely. And so they do. 2 police officers go in and they have a knife on them, and they notice that the flagstones are looking a little uneven in a certain place.
See, that's sloppy. Put them back properly. If you're going to bury a body, do it properly.
If you're going to do it, they have kind of penknife things on them, and one of them bends down and sticks the knife in between the flagstones, and they shouldn't give. There should be no give there, but it does. The knife sinks into the ground, and then they notice that there are damp patches on the corner of some of those flagstones, which would indicate that it's been removed recently and some damp has gotten either in underneath or has come up from underneath. So they're like, right, well, these flagstones need to come up. And on the 17th of August, they lead a search in the house where the flagstones come up, and they discover O'Connor's decomposing body under the kitchen flagstones. And he is the body has started to decompose, but the reason they eventually find out that it is O'Connor is because they go to his dentist, and we've seen this before, and his dentist is able to confirm through his teeth that it is him, and through his dentures actually, that it is him. So it's again this burgeoning idea of forensic science is coming into this case as well.
Yeah, and really quite early in the
1840s.
Yeah, really interesting. Okay, so the police now have a body. It's pretty clear who the murderers are because they've legged it, and the body was discovered under the floor of their kitchen. But how are they going to trace them? Because this is the 1840s. There's no CCTV. There's no phone signal pinging off satellites. What are they going to do? How does this work?
So they know there's been a fleeing. They know the Mannings are gone. So what they start by doing is approaching local cab drivers in and around the area who might have taken them somewhere. And eventually they happen upon the person who took Marie to London Bridge Station, where they then discover she left her luggage under the name Mrs. Smith, and then went on to Euston Station and bought herself a first-class ticket to Edinburgh. So she is trying to cover her tracks here. I think when we look at the when we try to look at the mastermind behind this, I don't think it's Frederick. I think it is Marie who is going, you take me to London Bridge, and then I'm gonna go over to Euston. That's where I'm gonna go from, even though the luggage is at London Bridge. And in that luggage, by the way, when they search it, because they still have it there, it contains 11 petticoats, not unusual, 20 stockings, not unusual, and the bloodstained clothes of Patrick O'Connor.
Right. Okay, I have lots of things to say there. First of all, obviously, for listeners, when we say the police were talking to cab drivers, we're talking like the Hackney carriage drivers with a horse, not the London black cabs that we have today.
Uber drivers.
She got an Uber to Euston. I mean, I think you can tell that she has a little bit more brawn about her than Frederick just by the murder weapons that they choose, right? That she, even though she fucks it up, that she has a pistol. She's going to shoot him. Well, I guess it's a pistol. She has a gun of... Yeah, it's a pistol. Okay.
Yeah.
And obviously she shoots him in the head, even though it doesn't work. And then Frederick's more of a blunt instrument that he's like, I'll just clobber him with a crowbar. And here, again, you see her attempting to kind of cover her tracks. She's using a fake name. The luggage is weird. One, why is it left behind? I suppose she's trying to get rid of the bloodstained clothes, but why is she also getting rid of 11 petticoats and 20 stockings? Because she's not rich. Presumably, 11 petticoats. I mean, first of all, would anyone of her social class have owned 11 petticoats? That seems like a lot.
Shut your face, Maddy Pelling, because you have just actually tied 2 parts of this case together in my mind. They belong to the daughter of the Duchess of Sutherland. I have no proof of that, but I bet you that's why she was kicked out. No proof.
God.
I'm risking my entire reputation. But...
And that would be evidence of the crime. So she's getting rid of it with the evidence of the crime.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It has to be that. It has to be that. We have solved a crime that we didn't even know existed. It was bound to happen.
We are now a detective agency.
Yes, we
Write in
are.
with your
Yeah.
historical requests.
Yeah,
We will be
yeah.
solving unsolved cold cases. Oh my God.
As you were talking there, I was like, oh my God, she's stolen these as well. Who did she
Because
steal the petticoats from?
why would she not take them with her?
Mm-hmm. She has to get rid of
She has to
crime
get rid of them.
stuff.
Crime stuff.
to use
Get rid of
technical jargon.
That's like the new Marie Kondo. If
Yeah.
you look at this object, is it crime stuff? Does it not bring you joy?
Because if it
Get
is,
rid.
leave it at London Bridge. So this is,
my
it's
God.
really, really obvious at this point that they know who they're looking for. And so they know that they need to go to Edinburgh because that's where they know Marie has gone now.
Okay, so we know that Marie's gone to Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And in a minute, tell me where Frederick's gone. But is Frederick happy with this situation?
No. She's betrayed him, yeah.
Okay, she's right. Okay, so she's thoroughly betrayed him, and presumably she's taken what little money they got off.
Yes, he gets
O'Connor
none.
with her.
He has none. Yeah, according to newspaper reports, and we don't believe them in all aspects, so we have to be careful about believing them in this aspect too. But according to newspaper reports, no, he has nothing. He just flees. She flees with everything.
Answer me this: if you had just been implicated in a crime and you were in central London, what station would you go to, and what city in Britain would you run to?
Oh God!
Or would you try and get on a plane?
I'd just try and go to Ireland, wouldn't I? I'd just be like,
that's so predictable.
No, I was here. Yeah, well, see, I'd be such a shit criminal. I really would. I couldn't
down
go.
in Dublin, like, wait, the police are just waiting to be like, mate.
What's the first place he might go? Home. Yeah, that just goes to show how bad. I just couldn't. Well, thankfully I couldn't. Like, this is giving me anxiety to even talk about this. I think I need to turn my fan on. I'm getting quite warm.
You'd just hand yourself in immediately. You'd be like, I can't be doing this. No. This is too much tension.
No. This is I don't have room in my thing for this. No, thanks.
Yeah.
But by now the press are already portraying her. So this is breaking to the press already. Frederick, by the way, you asked where is he? He's in Jersey.
Okay.
So maybe that's a better place to go.
Right. That is. I would go to an island, not Ireland, but an island somewhere off the coast of Britain, because nobody's gonna. Maybe not the Channel Islands, right? But like, I'd go to like a Scottish island. I'd go as far away as possible, and unexpected.
So this is where they have kind of split up, because I will say I don't know how they know he's in Jersey, but they do. They obviously track him in the same way. But the newspapers are more concerned with letting us know how they crack the Marie side of the case rather than the Frederick side of the case, which is, understandable in terms of the sensationalism that we're experiencing here. Either way, he is captured in Jersey in October 1848. He was trying to get to Australia, so he was really going for it, because if he'd gotten there, that would have been it. He would never have been.
I would rather go. No offense to all Australian listeners, but I would rather go to prison than Australia because of the heat. I'm sure
go
it's
to
a
Melbourne, you'll be fine.
Wonderful country.
If you go to Melbourne, you'll be okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Just
right.
don't. Yeah, Melbourne's a lot cooler. Well, I say that. I remember going and it was like 40 something in Sydney and all the rest of it, and then in Melbourne it was 20 something, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so cold here.
Okay,
whereas now 20 something kills me.
I'll be going to Melbourne.
Melbourne's
when I've
lovely
next
too.
Killed someone.
It's really nice. Yeah. So he was trying to get away. He didn't get away. And Marie is recognised in Edinburgh, so she's actually turned in. She was recognised by a pawnbroker who she's trying to sell some of O'Connor's possessions, and the police come and arrest her. So it's all very straightforward. Once it starts unravelling, it's very straightforward.
They're
it's very
pretty
like,
quickly.
come on, lads.
Yeah,
they are.
Now, that speaks to the widespread power and reach of visual and print media in this moment. This is 1848 at this point. That's so, I mean, I don't know. I'm always, even in the 18th century, I'm always amazed. I'm looking at a crime at the moment for my next book, and I've been kind of so impressed by when this person goes to trial. The trial is reported almost the next day across the country, and that blows my mind that even in that period there's such quick circulation. But this feels early to me, 1848, that an image of Frederick and Marie, and question mark over what that image is based on, is that
we
just
don't have
people's
it.
descriptions? I mean, they're not they're not going to have photographs.
Well, definitely not
So,
photographs.
no,
No,
but they're not going to have an artwork made of them. There won't be like a portrait hanging on
No.
their wall or anything. So I'm kind of a little bit confused by that. But the fact that that has been circulated to Edinburgh and that she is recognised from that, so it's a good enough quality image that she's recognised.
I wonder
is
if it is,
amazing.
and we don't know actually. Let me just caveat this, but I wonder if it is that, or if it's the fact that they whatever has appeared in the newspapers before they're caught is they may have these possessions that they're trying to rid themselves of.
That
And
makes
so
more
when we come
sense.
into a pawnbroker, it's like, oh well, hold on, I read something about a watch, and I read something about this. I don't know what the items were, but
Okay.
you can imagine that they might be that.
I'm sort of impressed by this Edinburgh pawnbroker though, because if you're a pawnbroker in the 19th century, are you really going to be questioning where these items have come from?
Right. So what we do get then is they're brought back to London, and we have a trial at the Old Bailey, of course, that runs from the 25th to the 26th of October 1848. I'll make it short, but you can read the trial transcript, which I did yesterday, online. It's just there. It's free. It is a little bit boring at times because it's so dense, but and you might be surprised at how quickly it goes by, because it's not very like our trials today, but it is, all the details are in there that we've discussed in this episode, and they are both found guilty and they are both sentenced to death. So we've seen in other cases, haven't we, in the 19th century, particularly in the later 19th century, where the man will be sentenced to death, but the woman won't be. But in this case, they're both sentenced to death.
Yes, and that is pretty unusual. And I think speaks to the perception, whether that's kind of media created or, it's just kind of seeped into the public imagination, and obviously the imagination of the court as well, that Marie is monstrous in some way, that she's kind of, I suppose she's transgressed feminine ideals for the time, also class ideals to a certain extent. She's possibly betrayed the daughter of a duchess and transgressed in her
We're saying
position.
she has.
We're just deciding she
Yeah.
had. But if that is the case,
Yeah.
if she's left under any kind of suspicion that she's transgressed those boundaries between a lady's maid and a lady, and that's incredibly problematic. And also, she's transgressed the boundaries of marriage, and has had a relationship with someone who is of a slightly higher social class than her in terms of Patrick O'Connor. Even though he's an Irish immigrant, his money alone stands him apart from the kind of life that Marie and Frederick
And she's
are
an
living.
immigrant too. So she had requested that the jury in her case was made up of foreigners, of immigrants, because it wasn't thought that British people could give foreigners a fair trial. They had to have other immigrants on the jury, but because she was married to a British citizen, they didn't grant her that. So she was tried by a jury of British men. And then we can come to the hanging, which is the 13th of November 1849, Horsemongers Lane Jail. And we have the notorious William Calcraft. Actually, we should do an episode on him because he's the executioner on the day. And apparently Marie turns to him and says, again, we can never fully know. There's so much invention in this trial. But apparently she turned to him and said, "Do murderers go to heaven?"
Babe, I think you know the answer to that.
Yeah. Well, actually, if she's Catholic, which there's a good chance that she is, that then it's a case of going, well, yeah, all you have to do is be genuinely sorry, such as the foibles
true.
of religious observance. They're publicly hanged together at the jail, as I said, in Southwark. And there is a death mask made of Marie specifically shortly after she'd been cut down. And we know that this then goes on to be used as a kind of a phronological thing, and, the head shapes and all that kind of thing. And a huge crowd, obviously, as you can imagine, 30 to 50,000 people are thought to have attended. So this was a real spectacle. And Marie, it was thought, it even influences fashion, because it was said that Marie wore black satin on the day of the execution, and that because of the association of black satin with her, that's why black satin went out of fashion. Whether or not that's true, it's questionable, but
Where
it said
was
that she did.
getting a black satin dress from?
She probably stole it from Year One.
Well, maybe, yeah.
It's got to be the answer to everything from now on.
Yeah, because I don't buy that. I don't think she was wearing black satin.
Yeah,
but
no, it's a little bit convenient, isn't it?
yeah, I think
Narratively.
it's interesting that they're hanged together on an intimate human level, because obviously Marie has betrayed Frederick, if not in terms of having the relationship with O'Connor, certainly in terms of ditching him and going to Edinburgh by herself with the little money that they did manage to get off O'Connor. So there's that, and they kind of, I guess, brought face to face in this last moment and have to kind of reconcile, or at least be faced with each other. But also a husband and wife being executed together. I think I'm right in saying that hadn't happened since about 1700. So yeah, it's an unusual spectacle, and you can see why it would draw such a crowd to kind of. There's even with this historical hindsight, there's still so many question marks over their relationship and the nature of it, and who was in charge of what happened and who plotted it and who went along with it. And I think people at the time would certainly have felt that, particularly given the depiction of Marie in the press as this manipulative woman. You can see why people would want to go and kind of analyse them as a pair.
Well, you're absolutely right, because we have data to say that they were really interested in this, because broadsides that focused on Marie specifically sold about 2.5 million copies at this time. So
that's wild.
Without a shadow of a doubt, they are eating this up at the time.
Yeah.
She gets into Madame Tussauds. She's there until the 1970s. And, as I said, the death mask is studied for all kinds of criminality and criminal intent there. And now, I will say this. This is an interesting case in terms of public executions, because it marks the beginning of the end in many ways. But I want to just kind of outline some of the moral outrage, and then just talk very briefly about that as a way to kind of round out this episode. So Dickens attends the execution in 1849, November 1849. And of course, he has a lot to say. So he says, "I believe that a sight so inconceivably awful as the wickedness and levity of the immense crowd collected at that execution this morning could be imagined by no man. I do not believe that any community can prosper where such a scene of horror and demoralisation as was enacted this morning outside Horsemonger Lane Jail." Now, reformers are arguing against stopping public executions. They're thinking it's kind of not very polite and it doesn't fit into Victorian moral society. Nonetheless, despite the fact that Dickens is writing this, I will point out he's going to an awful lot of public executions for somebody who is so against them. Like,
yeah.
he likes to be outraged, I think, and he's complaining an awful lot, and yes, he's campaigning, so you can't take that away, but we know he is at a lot of public executions because he writes about them. And it's just like, all right, Charles, we get it, like, stop going to them then, like, just keep writing about them if you want to, but you don't have to keep going to every one of them. Yeah. So that was interesting, I thought.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And this kind of marks a real shift, doesn't it? And I think so often we come across these cases, particularly murder cases, where there's some kind of intimate domestic drama that's played out, it's gone horribly wrong, maybe there's a couple involved, there's this question of sort of sexual scandal around them, and often they're the same. They go to trial, the trial is sensational, they're executed, there's a huge crowd. But I think with this case, it really does push the public conversation around public hanging forward. And actually, we're not that far off the Capital Punishment Amendment Act, are we? Which I think happens a couple of decades later, where executions of criminals are made private and carried out behind the prison walls so that only officials can witness them. And it seems to me, from everything you said, that this is one of those cases that does contribute towards that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's nearly a 20-year gap. So, yes, it's definitely contributing to the conversation. So it does take a little bit of time. But for me, this case is, I don't know. One of the reasons I said to you at the very top of this episode was, how do we know that this one was requested? Because I've never heard of it. I mean, I've never heard of so many of these things anyway. So I feel like I'm saying that nearly every episode. But I hadn't really heard of it, whereas you hear of an awful lot of other 19th century crimes of this type. But I think one of the reasons why it maybe hasn't endured in the public imagination in the same way as some of the other crimes is that there are so many questions, so many narrative plot holes, so many just issues around some of the details. Yes, we know the murder happened. We have those details, and they are, they're vital and they're interesting, and they tell us an awful lot about crime, about the recording of crime, about gender expectations, all of those things. But there is so much more to this case that I wish we could find out, but that we will never ever know. But that in itself means that this is just as captivating as some of the better known stories. And with that, Maddy Pelling, say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye to the people. Oh, I actually have to say something official.
No, why don't you just leave it at that?
that?
Leave it at that. Leave it at that.
Great,
they know how to get in contact. We tell them every time.